Aryama Sundaram with us this afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Aryama Sundaram. How would you interpret what's happened in court today?
Well, I think it has gone on expected lines, and I do believe that the Supreme Court has tried to balance all factors and deal with a bad situation which has arisen in Karnataka in the best manner possible. Looked at practically, you see, there was no manner of doubt in the very beginning that there was a big question mark against a party which wants to form the government, claiming that its justification from forming the government will be through getting people to defect and violate the constitution. I find it very odd, and it's a great paradox to say that a party wants to hold office, saying that, look, I can hold office and I will hold office, and the only way I can is by getting people to violate the constitution and the 10th schedule, which is exactly what the BJP said. Unfortunately, we had a governor who thereafter felt that even 1 week was too little, but they should be given 2 weeks to violate the constitution. Why give them only 1 week? Let's give them 2 weeks to horse trade. Now, faced with that situation, the Supreme Court was first faced with a situation where a governor had said that there would be a swearing in the morning. And in other words, it was a governor taking his decision to discharge a constitutional function, which is swearing in. So the Supreme Court said, look, we cannot stop a governor from discharging his constitutional duty. There is a constitutional immunity to the governor against such orders, but we can always discuss and decide on the actions of the governor and decide as to what is to be done by the person he appoints, and whether that person legitimately holds office. Which is why the Supreme Court, on that first day, said, look, we cannot stay the constitutional action of the governor in swearing in the chief minister, since that's discharge of a constitutional function. But we can certainly thereafter see the validity of his decision making, and also the validity of his actions, and also, if needed, replace the chief minister. Today when it came up, because you must remember at that juncture, there was a claim, howsoever baseless it was, that they had given a letter to the governor, and in that letter there was going to be all the people who were supporting them, and therefore they had the support. So the Supreme Court very rightly said, all right, we're having it on Friday, show us the letter. And the BJP came up a cropper because they couldn't show that at all. So what the court did in the circumstances is the most practical, sage thing to do. Number one, the person who's occupying that office, and where there are serious question marks about his right to do so, shall not take policy decisions. He cannot try to augment his numbers by making any appointment of any Anglo-Indian member in the meantime. There will be a pro tem speaker, so there will not be a dispute as to who's to be elected speaker. There will be a pro tem speaker, who normally by convention is the senior most legislator. And it will not be by secret ballot, so there's no question of under the wrap dealings between parties. So, and that the floor test will be conducted immediately within 24 hours or 36 hours. I think what the Supreme Court has done is probably the most practical manner of dealing with it. It is a very wise and sage manner to deal with it. And what is very telling is the Supreme Court has said that the legality and the manner in which the BJP was asked to form the government in the first place will be considered and decided by the Supreme Court later, which again means that the Supreme Court has some doubts as to the correctness of that action.
Now, you have perused through the Bombay judgment and also the Sarkaria Commission. Now, the counter argument has always been that the party with the single largest party actually in the order of preference should be invited if it claims that it can prove majority or win the confidence of the House. Do you believe that that should have been the case? Because there is a certain level of discretion that the governor has been given. Is there an order of preference, Aryama Sundaram, or is it that the Sarkaria Commission report says there are 4 ways it can be done, and it is up to the will of the governor and the discretion of the governor which order he chooses?
Look, the fact of the matter is that the governor's duty is to discharge his functions under the Constitution. Nor did the Sarkaria Commission nor any Supreme Court judgment say otherwise. The governor's duty to discharge his functions under the Constitution is, number one, to call as the person to become the leader of the House, the person who has the support of the largest number of members. Number two, his duty is to have an elected chief minister in office as soon as possible. And number three, most important, to ensure that there is no horse trading or violation of any provision of the Constitution, like Schedule 10, the anti-defection law. Now, what the Sarkaria Commission was dealing with was, if there's a case of uncertainty, the best way to resolve uncertainty is call the largest number of seats, the party with that, call a pre-poll alliance, etc. That is, if there's uncertainty. Now, the Supreme Court judgments, whether it's Rameshwar Prasad, whether it is Bommai, all of them, again, were dealing with questions of uncertainty. Now, these are cases where, take a state where there are 4 or 5 parties, all of them fragmented in their seats. There are about 20 independents. Now, as to who can cobble up a majority of them is in doubt, because it cannot be said with certainty that this group has a majority. But take a case where there are 3 players. Forget the 2 independents, because let's give the BJP both the independents. BJP has 106. The other 2 players have 116. Now, how can the BJP ever get a majority unless it is through horse trading? Unless it is to get people from the JDS or Congress to defect. And if they are to defect, then ipso facto, it is an encouragement to act in violation of the Constitution, in violation of Schedule 10. And it strikes me that a governor should say, look here, I have here, there are 2 parties, there's you, 2 independents I'm giving you, you have 106, they have 117. How can you get even one more than 106 unless you're going to poach, unless you're going to make them violate the 10th schedule, unless there's going to be a constitutional violation? Therefore, I should first call on them, because it's a very clear majority. That's what the governor did in Goa. And I think quite rightly, because they came up and said, here's our number. It was done in Meghalaya, it was done in Manipur. So what happens if the Sarkaria Commission is meant to be written in stone that that's the method? Are you saying that all those 3 were illegal? I don't think so. I think in every case, what the governor has to do is to see who can form a stable government, who has the numbers on that date. Now, it's a different matter if the numbers are in doubt or uncertainty. If it's in doubt or uncertainty, that's when the Sarkaria Commission guidelines come into play. Right. That is when the Bommai ruling comes into play, and that is when the Rameshwar Prasad system comes into play, when there are doubts or uncertainties.
This would be the pro tem speaker, the senior most leader of the legislature at this point, member of the Congress party, R.V. Deshpande, first here on Times Now. And Mr. Aryama Sundaram, Mr. Deshpande says he is not yet been contacted. Nobody has even told him that he is actually the pro tem speaker, even though, like you said, the convention is the senior most member is appointed the pro tem speaker. But he also says that Mr. Yediyurappa has a very, very uphill task. It's unlikely that he will win the floor test tomorrow.
Well, I think, like I said, on simple arithmetic, on paper, Mr. Yediyurappa has no chance. The only way he can do it is by getting people to defect from the Congress party or from the JDS. In other words, breach the 10th schedule. The point of the matter is, unfortunately, that's the lacune in our Constitution. Now, when he goes for the floor test, if these people do not follow the whip, the fact is he will win the floor test. If they all vote for him, he will win the floor test, but they, ipso facto, will thereafter lose their seats. Now, this is going to be a very interesting thing. Let us assume that he has, the 2 independents, of course, will not lose their seats. It's open to them to vote for who they want. So assume he has the 2 independents, and then he gets even 6 MLAs thereafter from the JDS and the Congress. Now those 6 lose their seats. What happens then? The House comes down to a strength of 215, because after all, Mr. Kumarasamy can only vote once, so effectively 215. At which stage, he still got only 106 against a requirement of 208 or 108. So, it's a never-ending problem here, which
I
won't
just want
really
to understand,
get over
Mr.
that
Sundaram,
easily.
the pro tem
but
speaker,
I just feel it's unfortunate.
How critical it is that the pro tem speaker belongs to the party that is going for the floor test, because the pro tem speaker does not get to vote, but the pro tem speaker can decide on expulsion and also invoking the anti-defection law. The pro tem speaker perhaps can also decide whether there should be a floor test by secret ballot.
Well, in this case, I don't think all that would arise, for the simple reason that the Supreme Court has very clearly said there will not be a secret ballot, despite the BJP making a request for it, because the secret ballot has a lot of chances of underhand dealings. Now, number one, the pro tem speaker has really no role here, because he'll have the members of the legislature have been directed to be sworn in first. So the moment they are sworn in, the anti-defection law will apply to them. Although in my view, in any event, even before the swearing in, their right to get sworn in is a matter in doubt if they defect. But leave that aside. So first they're going to be sworn in. There's no discretion there for the pro tem speaker.
Right.
Then there's got to be a vote of confidence by a show of hands. So there's no discretion for the pro tem speaker. So all that's got to be done by this pro tem speaker is to see that the House's proceedings are conducted smoothly so as to carry out the mandate of the Supreme Court. A floor test after the legislators are sworn in by a show of hands is to be conducted. And it is that. And the pro tem speaker will then declare the result of that floor test.
Right.
And the law takes its course thereafter. So I don't think tomorrow the floor tem speaker is left to the situation, shall I insist on a secret ballot, shall I do something else? That does not arise. So I don't think the BJP ought to be too worried, because whoever this pro tem speaker is, his role is very clear. It's not that one can steal a march over the other, unless they're going to breach the Supreme Court order or the Constitution.
Well, Mr. Aryama Sundaram, I thank you for speaking to us.